formation is that there's one thing that allows us to solve all three, if you bear with me for a second. And I think that that is the energy independence of the United States. If you look inside of what's happening in the US today, the cost of generating energy is effectively as cheap as it's ever been and as close to zero as it ever has been, and it's only going to get cheaper. The problem that we have is that we have all of these decrepit laws and infrastructure and regulatory capture that causes us to always be in an imbalance. And as a result, we do all kinds of crazy things. We borrow enormous amounts of money to create subsidies. We go and we fight all of these, foreign wars that don't make any sense. We wrap the energy problem in setting climate change language, which causes this cultural division. But my belief, quite honestly, is that the reason the IRA was so important is it is the most clarified piece of legislation we've seen that essentially puts all forms of energy on a level playing field and has the chance to get America to permanent energy independence. And if the cost of energy is zero and we can abundantly create it in the United States, what I think happens, David, is we have energy to rebuild our supply chain much cheaper, so inflation gets under control, we don't borrow as much. We have a completely different lens on foreign policy so that this interventionism and fighting over resources is much harder to justify. And we put the climate change language aside and we use energy independence as a form of national security, which gives us the courage to battle all these other cultural taboos that we otherwise have to say we agree with, even if they don't necessarily make any sense. And there's a bunch of them. So I don't know. My answer to your question, Jason, is that one thing, if we accomplish in the next 5 to 10 years, has a chance to really change the course of the United States.
Right, and then I'm guessing then Biden's your vote, because if it is in fact Biden, because Biden is the one who pushed for these clean energy tax credits and this policy in it. Freeberg, what do you think?
He also canceled our energy independence. I mean, look, we were energy independent based on fracking. You may not like fracking, but it did get us energy independent. You may think that there's environmental consequences to it that you don't like and that have to be balanced, but I've never been
against fracking. I believe in nat gas. I believe in coal actually as a bridge fuel. I believe in all of these things. I believe that these are all more important than going off to all of these foreign lands and trying to justify spending trillions of dollars and putting tens of thousands of American lives at risk, essentially for resources that we can actually create for ourselves at home.
Well, I agree with you on that, 100%.
I'm fine with,
I'll tell you,
clean fracking as a bridge. Go ahead. To getting to, more independence through nuclear and renewables. Go ahead, Freeberg.
Like I said before, China's declared that they're building 450 nuclear power plants. The net effective cost of electricity production out of a nuclear power plant is somewhere between 1 and 5 cents per kilowatt hour. The U.S. on average is paying 11 to 15 cents per kilowatt hour. Nuclear is just
through utilities, though, Freeberg. That's with all the regulatory capture and all that trash that you have to spend. For example, we have to spend $220 billion a year to replace the power lines in America by law. That's $2.2 trillion just there.
Right. And so the cost for solar and wind off grid, I think, is around 3 to 7 cents a kilowatt hour, in that range, right? So nowadays, it's gotten much more competitive. But I think that the nuclear solution is just not even being engaged in the conversation.